Most onboarding experiences start with silence. A new client signs up or fills out your form and then waits. Meanwhile, you're scrambling to send the right email, loop in the team, assign tasks, or even remember to check your inbox. This workflow solves all of that. It automatically sends a personalized welcome message, logs the client in Airtable, posts to Slack, assigns team tasks, and even routes the message based on the service they selected, all within seconds. I'm going to show you how we built this using n8n, GPT, Airtable, and Google Sheets. But don't think you're limited to just those tools. With a little bit of tweaking, you can also adapt it to like Notion, Pipedrive, or the CRM of your choice. If that sounds good, let's go ahead and jump into the build. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is demo the workflow, and then I'm going to walk you through each node step by step so you can understand how all this works. Now, at first glance, this probably looks intimidating because it's quite big. It's exceeding the bottom of my screen. But don't let its size fool you. This is actually really simple. A lot of these nodes are duplicated and have just minor, subtle differences in them primarily for routing purposes. So as you can see here in my Airtable node or Airtable base, it's empty. Slack is also empty. The Google Sheet, which is being populated by the Google form, is also empty. And then the Google form is empty. So I'm going to go ahead and fill that out now. We're going to fire off the workflow, and then we're going to go through it step by step. Okay, so we submitted our form. You'll see here that the form is populated. I'm just going to clean this up. So we have the timestamp, we have the name, we have the email, we have the service that the prospect or client is looking for, the additional information they've provided, and then an empty status. And then, of course, Slack is still empty, and so is Airtable. Now we're going to go ahead and fire off this workflow automation. We're not going to be able to see everything. I'm going to try to zoom out a little bit. But what you're going to want to pay attention to is the fact that this routes, it takes a particular path based on what the client selected. And then it's going to go through the messaging, and then it's going to route again here at the bottom. So I'm going to zoom out just a little bit, but probably not going to get everything in there. But should be able to get just enough to see the entire workflow do its run. All right, and that's it. You'll notice that was done very quickly. Now we'll jump in here in Slack, and you'll see that we received a message, new client onboarded, Clark Kent, the service, and then a link to the Airtable. Go here to the Airtable. You'll see that we have, what we have here is two tables. I can't remember how Airtable refers to these. So we have one base, so we have two tables. So we have the main table, which has all of the information from the form and the status that they're in. And then we have the client onboarding task sheet with all of the tasks for that particular job or that particular service, tasks associated to it, and who the tasks are assigned to, and then the current status. Now let's go ahead and go through this workflow node by node so we can understand how it works. Before we start going through the workflow node by node, one thing I want to point out is that unless you have an existing workflow that you just cannot deviate from, there is no reason to use Google Sheets and Airtable. Airtable is probably going to have more built-in functionality without the need for dev work or in-depth Google Sheet knowledge, as will, Smart Suite and Make and other similar CRMs. But you don't need Google Sheets and Airtable. You don't need Make.com and Airtable or Make.com and Google Sheets. One CRM, one database will suffice. I did it here because I wanted to build different tutorials for you to watch that have different triggers and different inputs, just so you can see how different things work. So just keep in mind that if you were to go and build this and you really want to streamline it, I would just choose one CRM or one database. There's no need for multiple. So for the triggers, I have a trigger schedule set up for or a schedule trigger set up for this. It'll actually, if this were turned on, it would go through Google Sheets. You could do this every day. You could do this every couple of minutes or every couple of hours. It probably is going to depend on your lead flow, your onboarding flow. How many people are you onboarding every day? So here's the data from the Google Sheet. It is a one-to-one what we got from the form and what we got from the Google Sheet here. And this is going to get passed along to the set node. The whole purpose of a set node, or one of the reasons why I use them, is to flatten the data and make it more accessible. You don't need the row number, for example, and I don't remember, but I don't think we use the timestamp either throughout the workflow. So using a set node helps you clean some of that up and just flatten the data a little bit more and make it more accessible down the chain. As is, you could probably get away with it, but I don't mind keeping it. But that's exactly what we did here. We got rid of the row number. We got rid of the timestamp. We just kept the name, email service, and notes. Didn't really flatten it anymore, but we did just make it a little bit cleaner. But again, probably not necessary. Now, the next step here is we're going to go through two switch nodes. So let's go ahead and go through the top one first, the switch node here. And with this one, they're both going to switch based on the type of job that it is. And it's going to route the message afterward. So you can see here we have full automation build, strategy call, onboarding audit, and custom project, which is what we have here in the form. Have the drop down the way it is, because this is just going to prevent errors. The alternative option is to go with something like a field, and you let the customer fill it in, but then your workflow is more error prone, because then you're leaving it up to the prospect or client to fill in the form, fill in the field exactly how you want it to make it work for the workflow. And your logic would need to be more complicated to make that work. So this is a much cleaner approach to doing that. The next step is an HTTP node. What we're doing with these is we're creating a message that we're going to take and filter or send through to the Extract GPT message node. But in this node, there is a prompt, and it's a very simple prompt of this is the onboarding client. We want to send them a message, send them a short message, thanking them for being a client and letting them know next steps. And then I'll go ahead and pull up an example of that email here in a minute. And then this, just like the set node, it just cleans it up a little bit and flattens the data. So rather than being multiple layers deep, as you can see here, and then having to come down here and then hoping that this logic doesn't break in a future, down the chain, what we do is we flatten it, and we also we give it a name that is easier to remember and reference, which is good for when you have to go through and troubleshoot your data. You know what this is. It's email message rather than content. It also helps to avoid any issues if you were to build this out and you were to have other fields or values with the name content. You're able to name these so that way everything is distinguished and you don't run into errors that way. And then we don't need everything else here, right? Like there's a lot of unnecessary information, at least for this workflow. All we need is content. And so by having a set node here, we cleaned it all up. And all we're left here is the email message. And then we have the send welcome email. We've got the subject line. Part of it is fixed. Part of it is dynamic. So welcome to Snapflow, person's name. Let's get started. And then the message, we have the message here that came from the HTTP node through the extract.gpt message. And it says, welcome to our team. I'm excited to assist you. Next, we'll schedule an introductory call to discuss your specific needs. Please use the following link. And we got a Calendly link. Looking forward to connecting with you soon. Best regards. And then here at the bottom, we decided to shut off the n8n attribute or attribution, which is automatically added to Gmail messages. And then we have our Airtable node, which creates the first record. And this takes all the data from Google Sheets, all the stuff that came from this form. It's just a one-to-one. We're just adding it to Airtable. Again, this is exactly the reason why you don't need both. If you were just to use, say, like an Airtable form or even a Google form and just add it all to Airtable, you could actually skip this step at the end. And really the only thing that we're doing here that we weren't doing sooner, but could actually do sooner, is add the status, the onboarding status. If you were to send the form data directly to Airtable, we could skip everything after the send, welcome, and Google Sheets here. Except, well, actually, we just skip the Airtable and the Google Sheets. We would keep the Slack, but we could do all of this a lot sooner and probably tighten up this part of the workflow. Same thing here with the Google Sheets. It would be Airtable. So we would be able to remove a couple nodes and then tighten things up a little bit. It might even be able to combine it down here, possibly. Anyway, just another reason or a bit of proof why we didn't need both. But the Airtable, the main form is filled out with all the standard stuff from the form. So name, email, service, the notes from the client, and then the status of onboarding. And then we send a message to Slack, which we looked at here. Very simple message, new client onboarded, service, full automation build, and then check out Airtable for next steps. Could actually add more details into that if you wanted, but it might get a bit convoluted, I suppose. If you look at all this information here and look at all this information here, it might be a bit too much to include in a Slack message, which is why I think I went the route of including the link instead. And then we updated Google Sheets. I believe the only thing we added here was the processed status. For some reason, the timestamp is missing. That part might be broken. So we didn't add it here and we didn't get it sooner. It's something I would need to look at. That is simple enough to grab from earlier on. Could just grab the timestamp from here and update it if you felt that was important. So yeah, the only thing here was changing the status in there to processed. And that is all this Google Sheet here is for. At this point, we no longer need this. That is the first part of the workflow. The second part of the workflow is filling out the second half, which is this portion here, which is the onboarding agent task list. This is filtering. This is determining what tasks need to be done based on the service and then assigning those tasks to your employees. And this is where it looks really intense, right? Because there's a ton of nodes here, but they are all the same with the key difference of once the message is, or once the service is routed, it goes through the proper node. And that's all. The only difference between these is the task and the person you're assigning it to. So I'll go through a couple of these as well as the switch node real quick. The switch node, I believe, is identical to this one. Yeah, so Exactly the same. Full automation build, strategy call, onboarding, audit, custom project. The only difference is this is going into the different task and who we're assigning it to. So the first two nodes are the ones that were triggered based on the type of service that the client that we're onboarding the client for. So you can see all the same information from the form, name, email, service, and their notes. And then we take all of that information, we add a couple things to it, like who we're assigning it to, the task, and we added a due date and a status. And then we take all of that data and put it together, and then we ship it off to Airtable. And then we have the ID, we have the created time, we have the field, the various fields with the name, email, task, assigned, service, and so on. And this one in particular is assigned to Mr. Garrison, and the task is schedule automation kickoff call. And then the next one is assigned to Randy, and it's the draft, the workflow, and status on both is not started. We have the due date, and yeah, all the information there. And there you have it, another simple workflow that will take a bit of work off your plate. It doesn't look or sound like a lot, I'm sure, but if you're onboarding multiple clients per day, having to create records in Airtable and then update them and then create another record associated to that client, but then assigning task and updating the status and doing all of those things really eats up a lot of time. And even if you're only onboarding a couple of clients per day or even per week, you could save a couple of hours easily with all of that work, and it's less error prone, and it can happen around the clock. Now, as noted earlier, it's not a perfect representation of what you'll probably want to use in a production environment because you don't need two CRMs. The Airtable could also be condensed into one table, so that way you have one source of truth and you have a source of truth for every client you onboard, which I think would be a much cleaner build. But hopefully you can see how something as simple as this could offload a bunch of work and save you a bunch of time every week. So I hope this helps. I hope you found it useful. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything at all, please drop it below in the comments. I read and respond to every single one. Also, please like and subscribe if you found this video useful. Click the notification bell if you want to never miss a YouTube video or tutorial that I publish. Last thing, if you want this template and all the other templates that I give away for free, you can get those by joining my email list. The link to sign up for that is in the description below. And that's it. With that, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.